Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Vegas 113. In this matchup, we have Nikolay Veretennikov taking on Niko Price. So this is a bit of an odd matchmaking for both of these guys. It was originally supposed to be Eric Nolan versus Jose Souza. Then Eric Nolan pulled out, and Veretennikov stepped in on short notice to take on Souza. Then Souza um, withdrew due to injury or something like that. And now Niko Price has stepped in on short notice to take on Nikolay Veretennikov. So kind of funny how this whole fight has now just come together in the span of a few days. And this is one of those fights where, experience and chaos is going to meet youth and I say discipline very loosely. I'm going to say that right now. Niko Price, he's always dangerous because he is willing to get weird and just take risks. I mean, this is a man who knocked out Randy Brown from his back. Price was on his back with hammer fists from the bottom. I don't even know how it's possible. He just hits that hard. Meanwhile, you have Veretennikov, who goes more straightforward, a bit more controlled. And when you push those two styles together, I think the big question becomes whether Price can pull something wild out of the fire or whether Veretennikov can keep things tight and not play into the madness. Now, quickly looking over their last five. To be honest with you, was more so shocked that Veretennikov is still in the UFC. If I'm being honest, I'm also surprised Price is still in the UFC because both guys have not been doing well as a reason. For Price, he's 1-4 in his last five. Got badly finished by Phil Rowe and Robbie Lawler. Got a okay win against Alex Morono in the rematch. Now on another 2-fight skid, got decision by Themba Gorimbo, and most recently got submitted by Jacoby Smith back at UFC 317. For Veretennikov, he's 2-3 in his last five. Specifically, he is 1-3 in the UFC. Now, granted, took on Danny Barlow on short notice, so I give him that. Then got absolutely whooped by Austin Vanderford and then proceeded to shove him after the fight, which I thought for sure would have get Veretennikov booted from the UFC. Instead, he gets his first UFC win against Francisco Prado in a close decision back at UFC 318, and then most recently lost a decision where he stupidly would not defend the takedown against Poliane Soriano at UFC 320. In a fight where Veretenikov's IQ was hair pulling. So you have two guys who, like I said, have not been looking great as a reason. Actually, I'm surprised both of them are the same age at 36. But for Price, he's more or less washed in terms of his chin is not what it used to be. And, like I say, he is getting older. For Veretennikov, he may not just be UFC level, plain and simple. Oh, except for one win, which, again, was a very close fight. So it'll be interesting to see which one of these two welterweights gets a much-needed win. Now, without further ado, let's get down to the breakdown. Starting with Niko Price. His style is pure chaos. He throws from odd angles, doesn't care much about defense, and is always hunting for something crazy. A wild hook, a sudden knockout, even a weird submission, if possible. Niko Price is tough, but obviously his chin isn't what it used to be. Price is, he's fearless for sure. And he's never out of fight. Like I said, he's got that crazy power where he can knock someone out from his back with hammer fists from the bottom. I still don't know how he did it with Randy Brown, but he did it. And even when things aren't going his way, he's still dangerous because, he's so unpredictable. The downside is that Price takes a lot of damage. I'm thinking of like the beatdowns he took from Vicente Luque in both of those fights alone. Or like I said, this sudden losing bit he's on where Robbie Lawler knocked him out in about a minute. Price's style makes him very hittable. He's always relied on his toughness, and as the fight goes on, that catches up to him. And his style best works when opponents get sucked into the brawl and lose structure. But even then, he's been out-brawled before, and when fighters aren't going to brawl with Niko Price, they're very good at controlling him, like Themba Gorimbo showed, like Jacoby Smith showed when Jacoby Smith showed also really good wrestling in that fight, was able to control Price and eventually get the submission. Now, looking at Veretennikov, he is much more composed than Niko Price for sure. Solid striker who keeps his hands up and throws straight shots, doesn't overcommit. Veretennikov, he likes clean exchanges and controlled pressure. He's not trying to do anything flashy, except when he kept spinning back kicks to the body against Prado. Most of the time, Veretennikov, he just wants to land, defend, and stay balanced. And he also looks more physically fresh. I mean, granted, he's like I said, he's the same age as Niko Price, but he has a lot less fights in the UFC, so he's not taking as much damage as Niko Price. And I think instead of chasing knockouts, Veretennikov, he is happy to win the fight piece by piece. Now, how I see this fight going, or how they clash. Early on, Price is probably going to try and make things uncomfortable. He'll throw something wild, maybe eat a shot just to give one back, and try to drag Veretennikov into a brawl. That is probably his best chance, and if Niko Price still has his power, I can see him hurting Veretennikov quite a bit in this fight. But I don't know if he can finish it, because Veretennikov, for all the shit I'm giving him, he does have a pretty good chin. He took some big shots from Danny Barlow, who's a pretty good, accurate striker. I know he's no longer in the UFC, but still. Austin Vanderford didn't really hurt him that much, but it's just simply due to the fact that Veretennikov didn't move from bottom. And he took some shots from Soriano, who hits pretty hard as well. But granted, Soriano mostly wanted to wrestle in that fight, not really strike. The key factor in this fight is whether Veretennikov takes the bait. If Nikolay, if he stays patient, keeps his distance, and picks Price apart with straight punches, this fight leans his way pretty quickly. And Price's defense, leaves him open so many times. And Veretennikov is the kind of guy who can take advantage without overreaching. I think as the fight goes on, Price's wild style means he's taking more damage than giving. His durability is real. He took some good shots as of recent, like Jacoby Smith is a pretty good athlete, and Niko Price is able to take some of his shots. But again, he is still pretty chinny in this stage of his career. And Veretennikov can stay steady, keeps landing, and doesn't let the fight spiral into chaos. Then Veretennikov has a good shot, especially if he mixes in clinch control or just slows the pace. That's another problem for Price, who thrives in chaos and struggles when things are measured and calm. So, how I see the fight going, or my prediction. Price is always live, for sure. There's always a chance he lands something crazy or finds a moment out of nowhere. That's just who he is. But over the course of the fight, I like Veretennikov's chances a lot more. He's cleaner, more disciplined, and less likely to beat himself, if you know what I mean. Put himself in less bad positions in this fight and not leave himself as open as Niko Price does. And as long as Veretennikov does not get reckless and he has a solid game plan and keeps that game plan, he should be able to control most of the exchanges and steadily win rounds. And I see Veretennikov just landing the better shots, avoid the worst of the chaos, and taking this either by decision or knockout. But for my official prediction, I'm going to go with Nikolay Veretennikov, and I'm going to pick him via knockout in this one. I just don't trust Niko Price's chin worth a damn at this point. It's a shame, too, because like I said, Niko Price is a fun guy, for sure. But I just think the game, I think the game has passed him at this point. And like I said, his only win is against Alex Morono, who he himself has not been looking good either as of recent. So I got to side with Veretennikov on this one. As much as I don't really think he's UFC level, I think he's still a good level above Niko Price right now. So once again, I'm going to pick Nikolay Veretennikov, and I'm going to pick him via knockout in this one. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of this matchup. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win. Until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. And remember, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. I'll see y'all next time.